Welcome to another episode of Hearts Wide Open.
The Men's Health Podcast.
I'm Sarush, and here I have Dennis with me. Yeah, Dennis, what are we going to talk about today?
Last week, Sarush and I went to a men's circle in Amsterdam. A guy that I met at a different event on masculinity a few months ago invited us to join their monthly men's circle.
This was the first time I go to officially a men's circle. I liked it. I liked the fact that, first of all, maybe the location was, for me, it was a little bit unexpected. It was like a squatted house, and I've never been to a squatted house, actually. And maybe for people who don't know what is a squatted house, I think you can explain it better.
Basically, it's a empty house that, I don't know, for whatever reason, nothing is happening to, and people who cannot afford like the high rent prices in Amsterdam that are still rising due to the housing crisis. There's like organized groups that take these type of houses because they're empty anyways, and then they start renovating them and living in them and like building community there. So it's kind of a community house, and they are allowed to use it to host a men's circle.
Everybody was quite open-minded, ready to share what they wanted to share. And even though I didn't expect to spend two and a half hours there, but I think at the end we ended up spending 2.5 hours there. But I enjoyed it. How was your experience?
This was not my first men's circle, and I have to say also, like, this was one men's circle. I think gatherings of men can have different shapes and forms, and men's circles can also be different depending on the group, the vibe, who's organizing it, what the agenda is. I think a men's circle can also just be going out with some friends for some drinks, and it can be a men's circle, but then like there's different level of depths of conversation, I guess. For example, some things I would not probably discuss over a drink in a bar that I would rather discuss in a different type of space. But yeah, so those can be very simple men's circles, goes all the way on to where you're meditating together, discussing topics together. This one was like kind of a discussion round. Yeah, I think it was very cool that I got the feeling that everyone there came and showed up as their authentic self and really said what their opinion was and what they're thinking. And we had a very respectful discussion as well with each other. I think we were like 6-7 people. And I truly believe everyone was showing up as themselves, and like there was no like fear of being rejected for what you're gonna say, or like feeling that maybe you're oversharing now. People were also talking about really vulnerable stories from their lives that happens to them. For their privacy, we're not gonna go into detail of those things, but it was really inspiring to see that you can get together with a bunch of people that, like, most of them you haven't met before, and you can create this kind of space where everyone's just respectfully sharing, and like also like you get impacted from each other's opinions and thoughts, and made me think a lot. Also afterwards when we left, I was thinking, like, this was a really nice space and it was just with a bunch of strangers. Why can't we create this kind of spaces more with people that are already in our lives? How can we like maybe actively try to be more real with each other, more authentic? And like, I want to speak to you, also sometimes we have this dynamic as well between Suresh and me, that I have the feeling, okay, now he's putting me in a box because we know each other pretty well now. And then it's easy to think, he's just talking like this again. But then this time maybe I'm thinking in a different way, or I want to say something else that's maybe outside of this box. And then, I'm just wondering, I mean, we managed to get into these conversations a lot of times, but sometimes also not, which is also fine.
So basically you want to know why you cannot create these safe spaces that you feel free basically to share how you feel, and also listen to other people's what they have to share without judgment or pre-assumptions. And the second one is basically how can we create these safe spaces for people to share what they want to say and be vulnerable.
Yeah. How's for you? Like, do you have the struggle as well?
I do struggle more with the second part, because I do want to create more of this space where you are comfortable and yourself and authentic without being afraid to judge. And those are the spaces I'm usually most comfortable with and prefer to spend my time with and surround myself with those kind of people, like you or other friends. But I don't struggle with the first part maybe that much, to open up about how I feel about things. Or when I'm with my friends, to talk about my emotions. Well, maybe that's not correct. I do have it, yeah. I also do struggle sometimes. I cannot be fully myself and just say stuff because that's how I feel. Because maybe I feel like for me the biggest thing is I'm afraid that if the person doesn't reciprocate what I'm sharing. Like if I say something and you quickly ignore it or move on or you're not listening, for me, I close up. I take one step back. I was like, okay, why should I share? They are not there for me to listen.
Yeah. So it's like you're basically have a fear of rejection for what you would like to say. So then you say it in a different way or not at all. Or
Yeah. Usually not at all.
okay.
Yeah. If I feel like the person cannot hold that space, I would not share it.
Another thing I also find interesting in this regard is for me with family, for example.
Yeah.
I feel like there's these dynamics and roles that are already established for a really long time, and somehow when I'm with my family, I slowly go back into those roles, even though they don't fit me anymore, because this may be a past version of myself. And that's kind of making it difficult for me to be my true self from the now, because I'm playing a role, you know?
Can you maybe give an example of that role?
For example, sometimes I have the feeling that my parents are telling me their problems and looking for a solution from me. But that's not my role. Like maybe I took that role in the past when I was a kid or like a young adult, because I didn't know any better and I was put on the spot, or I felt like this is what I have to do. But now I realize for myself, no, this is not my role. I cannot parent my parents, and that's like not my job. So I don't want to do that anymore. But now when I spend like a couple days with them, for example, I'm like sometimes I get pushed back into the old role, you know? It's like, okay, now I'm discussing with them again about their problems. Like I got sucked into it, and they're not actually looking for a solution there. And in those topics, and my real self would have boundaries and say, hey, stop, this is not my role, thank you, you know, and then just leave the conversation. But over time it's pretty difficult sometimes to stay strong and be like my true authentic self. But then when I do, I feel like I can also way better connect with my parents, you know. They then see me, they then respect me more. So it's like, it's better if I'm just myself, but it requires more effort because I cannot just go back into that role for my parents. Yeah.
Oh, I understand.
In our research, we also saw that coming from a different culture to Western Europe, that there's also sometimes like cultural expectations or roles that you are to fulfill, and that's keeping you from being your authentic self. Like I know in Iran, from my family side at least, it's like some people you just have to respect them no matter what they say, you know.
That is true.
And you cannot talk back or something like that.
Yeah. This is kind of what we also talked about in, I think, 2 episodes ago with Alijan as a guest, about setting boundaries with parents. I think especially is hard for me as having this Middle Eastern parents. Okay, maybe that's a little bit generalizing, but basically my parents feel like they devoted their life to me, and now they kind of deserve my full attention and full like my mom expects me whenever she calls that I pick up, or they are my number one priority in life, and I love them. And if I don't pick up and if I still go on traveling on my own, it doesn't mean that I don't love you. It's just I also need time for myself, and it's important to set those boundaries. And it's difficult for them to hear, and it's a difficult conversation to have for you and me also as their kid, because as you said, maybe we grew up in that role of you always say yes to whatever your parents say. Yeah, so I can reciprocate that when coming to a new culture. Now it can be difficult.
Yeah.
Today I had a conversation also with someone about this,
Okay.
and they exactly had the same problem. They're like, oh, whenever I'm home, my mom is over worries, and I get into that role
Yeah.
of the little kid, and I also start worrying. What worked for me is straight up communicating this with them, that hey, thank you so much for being my parent and giving me love or taking your time and energy to make me the person I am today. But it doesn't mean that I live for you, right? And this might come as a kick to them.
Okay.
If you go to someone who loves you unconditionally, say, hey, thank you so much, but I don't live for you, and I am my own person, and trying to kind of claim your space and identity from them.
So you would say you would recommend to say it to the person, like, look, I realize you're treating me or you're saying these things, but just realize this is not my role. And
yeah,
okay.
If you feel like it's not your role, some people would happily still take that role.
Yeah.
But if you feel like, that's something you don't want to do anymore, or you're not comfortable, or it's really not your responsibility, just go to the person, say, hey, maybe even ask, hey, do you expect this from me or not? Because sometimes we put the expectation on ourselves.
Asking questions is very powerful.
With the parent thing, I feel like when I go back, my parents, they also complain about each other. I feel responsible to calm down the situation, de-escalate the situation. But I don't think really that's what they want.
No.
So I think you just ask them, hey, do you want me to do anything about this? Or do you want me to just listen?
Yeah.
And I found actually to my interest, the response was, I don't even want you to listen. They're just talking about it.
They just want to vent.
Yeah, this is what it is. And you don't have to do anything. So there's no imposed role on you in that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And talking about it helps. So first of all, validate, is there any expectation? By asking question. Second of all,
are you going anywhere with this? Are you looking for a solution?
Are you looking for a solution? That was number one. Are you looking for a solution? What do you expect from me? Number two, they come to you, say, I expect you to de-escalate the situation. Ask yourself, is this my role? Do I want to take this role? If the answer is yes, great, you do it. If the answer is no and you don't want to do it, don't. And communicate that with the person that, hey, I know you might want to calm down or talk with the other person, but this is really not my job. Go talk to a friend, a therapist, whoever else is responsible. And number three is, then I think this too kind of leads to you to claim your space and boundaries, that now they know that, okay, this is really not his responsibility or his area that he want to reply. And they still might cross and tease it every once in a while, but I found that it's important to kind of set a stone on your boundaries and say, hey, thank you, I will listen to you, but I cannot do anything about it.
Yeah. And last, I think also repeating this again and again, this will
Correct.
Truly lead to change, because then over time they get used to your boundaries, they know where they are.
Yeah. You cannot change the people around you, but you can change yourself. And you can try to affect people's behavior by the way to respond, you respond to it. So if your, parents, friends come to you, would say, hey, this happened. And you say, but sorry, it's not my thing. I can listen to you, not my thing. Second time happens, you give the same response. Third time happened. The fourth time they would not come to you.
Yeah.
Or they
will ask you kindly, like,
hey, can you help me? Yeah. So you didn't ask them to change. You just changed the way you responded to how.
And that changes the relationship.
That does change everything. I realized.
That's amazing. When you said this now was very blunt and in the face. If you're having this conversation also with myself, I realized the way you talk and communicate is also very important. Because when I tell my parents my boundaries in a friendly way and I explain it a little bit, with a smile on my face and with like compassion and like it's obvious that I love them, I'm just giving like some honest feedback here, then they react very differently than if I would just say, no, you're overstepping my boundaries,
Yeah.
It's like the way you communicate as well. And that reminds me of a thing from the men's circle, this quote, I wish I had the thing with me, thing like, you are crossing my boundaries, or I feel my boundaries are being crossed. Like the way you say
take
it,
responsibility over how you felt.
Yeah. I feel my boundaries are being crossed is very different to you are crossing my boundaries.
Yeah.
So then I think if I do the second part, these conversations become much easier. So if I'm like, just being like, my boundaries are being crossed.
You are responsible for how you felt and communicating that.
Yeah.
And then how the other person reciprocate, that's a different game. And it's not just, we talked a little bit more about parenthood, but it's not just about that. It's about basically any relationship that you have with your partner, with your friends. If they constantly talk negative about things, if they're constantly complaining or something that you don't like, and you constantly enter that situation without talking about it, I don't know, for me, this person is just going to go back and back and back.
It sounds very draining to me.
It is also very draining. So it's important to, coming back to the topic, why sometimes we don't talk about how we feel. Maybe I don't feel that this person is going to understand anyway. So then for me, I will kind of try to vanish or put the person aside, because whatever I say, I told you 5 times that this thing that you do triggers me, and you're still keeping doing it. And then for me, it shows that you don't respect what I say and how I feel. And then I don't want that.
Not respecting the boundaries.
Yeah. But still, the responsibility is on me
to communicate.
That. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love this, man. This little co-creation here.
Yeah.
On how to foster more authentic spaces.
Yeah. We also talk a little bit about what I said now. Maybe talk to the person about it. I actually think this is sometimes difficult for people to say, hey, Dennis, come sit down, we need to talk. And I say, this is how I feel. So this is the direct approach, but you can also take the indirect approach. And I found that recently I read this is not everyone is so direct about things and so blunt, and you don't also have to be. Maybe it also depends on the people. So with you, I can be blunt because I know you can take it. With my partner, for example, I can maybe not be super blunt because for her, it's all of a sudden too much in her face. Okay. So then maybe you can express yourself in a different way. You can put on a music that is related to a topic that you want to bring up. You can put on a movie that's with your parents, there's like a father-son relationship, and then during the movie or at the end, just ask, how did you feel about this?
I feel like this could also come across a bit manipulative, no? Because you're like, now you're designing a life to make me think about things that you think I should improve.
No, I'm not designing a life. It's a different way that I'm communicating my needs to you. Because at the end, we're going to talk about it, right? It's not that I'm manipulating your subconscious. Some people, if it's difficult for them to directly, they find it offensive to bluntly tell them, hey, you do this, I don't like it. It's way easier for some people to, for example, have this discussion while walking, because you're not facing each other. It's less confrontational. We are looking the other way, but we still can hold a maybe not so easy conversation, or add some form of play to it. Especially if you have this kind of conversation, do something that, I don't know, do a hike, do a painting like we did the other time on the podcast. Introduce an element of play or a different element, and then also carry the conversation. And then it's easier for people to dissolve into this kind of conversation.
I hear 2 things, and like also on this podcast, we love to experiment with different ways of communicating with each other, like our painting episode, some other cool stuff coming up where we're gonna record podcasts outside live and so on. So like, yeah, definitely listen to the other episodes and what's coming if you want to hear more about these experiments. And like today we're talking about going to that men's circle. What I hear from you, what you're just saying is, keep experimenting with different ways to communicate more authentically and more clearly in that way. Your emotions, your needs, your feelings, your boundaries. But I also hear a bit of like dosing, maybe the amount you give. Because sometimes you've talked about things for a long time, or you've done like work on a certain topic, and then or you've been opening up a lot. I think now this taps in about oversharing that we mentioned in the beginning as well. This fear of oversharing. I'm talking too much about myself. For this, it can sometimes be helpful to open up slowly to your friends rather than all at once, and to like just talk a little bit about yourself and the things that your needs, your feelings, your emotions, and then also to give it a break, to let the person get accustomed. I visited my great aunt. She's like over 80. I visited her for 2 days, and the first evening I arrived, I was asking her all these questions about our family and the past, and how was it when you were a child, and why did you do this, and how did that feel. And she was super overwhelmed because I never asked her those questions before, and normally we would talk on a very more superficial level. But then I saw that, and then I stopped asking a little bit, and I was like, okay, it's fine. And then we did some other stuff, and then the next day I talked some questions came back again, and then she was like super open and really like sharing a lot from her childhood, from the things she experienced. And it was amazing to see, like, one night of sleep helped her to see, okay, maybe with Dennis we can talk like this, this open and authentic. It's pretty amazing.
Because not everyone can also, first of all, not everyone is used to talking this much about emotions. And people sometimes they need their space. This is the second thing. And some people need to think about things. Like with you, we are open, we talk about things bluntly on the spot.
Sometimes we also need our 15-20 minutes before we can really.
Yeah, but for example, with my dad, I will ask him a question about his childhood. He comes back to me next week in a different setting that we're casually walking, and he starts to open up. Okay. So then this is kind of the relational intelligence that you as a person can develop to try to provide that safe space for the person to come and share. Right? It can be by you sharing something vulnerable, and that person realizes, oh, maybe this is not so dangerous to share something here. Or by being a good listener and try to really listen and have empathy for what the other person has to say.
Yeah, so maybe you can share what you shared with me backstage before, because you've had this experience, right? So like, you have to tell it yourself, but basically, where in this dynamic you were sharing a lot and you were not sure how to get the other person to also share.
No, I was just...
Because you're that type of person that shares more, no?
Like, no, I'm the person who shares more.
Naturally. Me too.
Naturally. I'm comfortable with sharing. So if I sit down with someone and if I know they can reciprocate it or at least listen to it, it's like what you said. I tease the waters. I first say something, see what is the response. Is this person can emotionally handle what I have to say? If the answer is no, I will change the topic or have some other conversation with the person. If the answer is yes, and they show interest in more of what I have to say, I will happily share more because I know they can handle it. And I used to expect them to share something emotional or vulnerable back. And when they didn't, I was like, whoa. I left out. I felt like, back to episode number 3, naked on a plate, left out. Because I just told you the story of my life and you didn't say anything. This is how I felt.
So how did that work with your friend?
So with her, she had to go home, think about what I said, to process it. And then the next day or the week after, she came back and she opened to me. But then something that worked for her was what she needed is someone that is a good listener. Okay. Right? So she usually is a good listener herself. So she doesn't talk about her emotions first. She just sits there silently. By holding a space, she just has an aura that you will open up to her.
You feel comfortable there in that
You feel
presence.
comfortable because she doesn't judge you. She usually hold the space. She understands. She has empathy. So you naturally feel safe to open up. Without her sharing anything on the spot, you feel safe to share.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is the thing. Like whatever we also say on the podcast is not 0, 1, A, B, C. These stuff are very complicated. And you have to kind of tease the water, try this a little bit, play that way. I don't know. Some people are blunt. Some people would like to have it more in the form of play. Some people want to watch a movie and talk about things. And I'm personally finding this out more and more this year. Also through my job being a manager, that I have to hold spaces for different people from different backgrounds, that every person is different. And the key in being a good leader or manager or friend in a format of a relationship is to be able to hold this space kind of separately for each person, dedicated to the way they want to be.
Be present for them, listen actively.
Yeah. And it's different for everyone.
Transmit that feeling of safety or whatever feeling it is they need to also open up and feel comfortable.
Exactly.
Some of the things that we also researched, and this makes sense a lot with our stories, is empathy. Try to like really see the other person and their needs as well, and communicate your own. And that's all that's in your control as well. So everything else, I think not every person needs to be forced by us, or like we don't need to try to be in an authentic dialogue with everyone we meet. No. But when we want to and when we care and when we can, I think that's a nice path we can take with all the sharings we did and learnings we shared across the episode. To foster more of such open dialogue where everyone can be their authentic self.
Yeah. And sometimes just be there for people to listen. Sometimes you don't have to say anything. People just want a pair of ears. And maybe you can be that pair of ears. And I feel like sometimes even on this podcast, on this same episode, we are not listening to each other. I'm 100% sure, because you're talking and I'm already thinking about what I want to say next. And I'm talking, you probably are already...
I'm actually actively shutting it down today.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
That's why I'm a bit more slow. That's why I'm a bit more slow. So, yeah.
No, that's good. It's good to know. But sometimes, really, you see sometimes you talk to someone and they immediately respond back. Yeah. According to research, people need at least 1 or 2 seconds if they are listening to you. They need 1 or 2 seconds after you finished your thoughts to hear it, to process it, and then prepare a response to you back if they're actually listening to you. So there might be always pauses in your talks. So if you sometimes hear it also in our podcast, it's because we try to hear it, process it, and then come up with a response. So maybe be that person sometimes with your friends. It's okay to just take a pause, try to process it. You might not even want to reply back anything.
Honestly, if you take that pause, I think a lot of times I respond fast because I have fear that the pause will end. You know, that I don't have time to communicate my point because you don't hear anything for 1-2 seconds, so you just continue. You know?
Okay.
Not just with you, in general, I have this with everyone, actually. And depending on the group I'm in. So if I'm in a group as a men's circle where everyone talks and then people listen and pause and then the next person can talk. In that group, I did not feel like I need to catch my time or something, you know?
I remember in the men's circle, actually, we had long pauses.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was okay.
And then at the same time, I do think we're doing something next level here because we are trying to have this really authentic, open conversation every time when we're recording, of course, because that's what we're about with this podcast. At the same time, we have microphones, a camera, notepad, and and we're also having this conversation. So this also requires us to be actually even better listeners. And also you, when I'm not looking at you, for example, you still need to understand that I'm trying my best to be fully here, even though my eyes are not maybe with you right now. But then if we would not record, we would probably sit a bit differently actually like this probably, but I would look at you more, you know. But yeah, we have this understanding, and we're doing it for the podcast, and we're trying to leave less pauses and filler words, and also try to have a coherent story here. So it's maybe not the fully natural habitat, or like it's not normal to record this type of conversations.
Maybe the flow is not what you
yeah.
hear in every other episode, every other podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But we really try to make it as realistic as possible, and training ourselves to be like this. Last thing, maybe start small, creating these authentic spaces, step by step. Try different things, try different environments, techniques of communicating. We talked about boundaries. We talked about fear of rejection for what you're gonna say, oversharing.
It's a lot about teasing the waters. Is that the expression? Teasing or touching the water?
Testing the water.
Testing the water, sorry. For me, it's a lot about testing the water. If you are already a person that is okay to be vulnerable, then you can test the water. Try to share something. If the person reciprocates, then maybe you want to have them around and have that conversation and friendship and relationship with this kind of people. If you are not okay with sharing about your personal life or vulnerabilities, maybe it's good question to ask yourself that why not.
Actually, it's a human need to do that, like, because it leads to human connection. If you're authentic and open,
correct,
only then you can truly connect with another human.
What I find is that a lot of people have this open communication more in their relationship, especially guys. I think guys are more, they can talk about this kind of openness in their relationship with their girlfriend, partner,
because it's needed to have, because you want a connection with that person, like, by design.
But it's less in maybe male friendship groups.
Okay,
this is the point. And if that is something that you need, which I think everybody needs that, try to find male friends that are around you and you feel safe around them to share. You can test the water, see if they can reciprocate, and how sometimes be just there to listen, see if they open up, or maybe you try to open up a little bit and try to create a dynamic and have this kind of people around you.
Yeah, like bring a topic. Hey, I want to talk about what it means to be a healthy man. We have a really cool offer, because we are organizing men's circles online and offline. So if you're interested to join one of these men's circles, you can drop us a message, and we'll get in touch with you. And we'd love to have these conversations with you if you want to be part of this podcast as well. Not that these conversations will be on the podcast, but you might get the chance to share your story with more people. While you're at it, please make sure to subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening, and leave us a 5-star review and a like for this episode. It really helps us amplify the voice for men's health and men's mental health, and supports us in having more conversations like these and do more cool stuff for you guys. Yeah, and share it with your friends, share it with that male friend that maybe you wanted to talk about. Can be a sign. It can dude. It can be a form of play. Yeah, this is the thing. Hey, I realized with some people we share podcasts. Like I don't want to have direct conversation. I just send them a podcast about it. So just tease it. Or if you are a partner, if you are dating someone that you want the partner to hear it, also share it to them. I think it's good that it doesn't take that much time to listen to this episode, and I think it has some interesting knowledge for everyone. Let's go. Yeah. That's been it. That's been it. And we'll see you with a guest on the next episode. See you later.